And we are there. Here we go again. This is another one of my stories of our lives interviews with amazingly generous people who come on and talk to some crazy guy who's trying to do something that he's not even really sure about. And they they come on and share themselves with me for 40 minutes, which is so generous. And I'm really grateful for it. This lady I've never met, but she's, according to my partner, she's a complete force of nature. And she was right on the list of people I should talk to. So I trust her, and I'm going to speak to Jude Adams. And I'm going to try and find out a little bit about her today and let her tell her stories. Hi, Jude. How you doing?
Hi, Frank. Hola.
So tell me about Hola. Why Hola? Where are you?
I'm in Cadiz.
Excellent.
Cadiz right now, as I'm supposed to pronounce it.
Okay.
And I've been here for, how long have I been here? Nearly just over 3 weeks now. And I'm in Cadiz for another 2 weeks, and then I'm doing a sort of couple of weeks holiday, traveling around a bit with my partner. So I'm kind of here to really for sunshine, although we're going through 3 days of really overcast, relatively cold weather for here, and lots of wind and things. So, but it is on the whole much sunny and brighter, and more sunny and brighter and warmer, I'm afraid to say, than back home. And that's partly why I'm here, which is sort of for health reasons, but also to allow me to get back into a writing groove and just take time out really to reflect and rest and things like that.
Love it.
I'm trying Spanish, but that's not terrible. I confess, I'm being a bit of a lazy Brit, although I am having 1 or 2 Spanish lessons and I'm trying, but it's all a bit monosyllabic. But
yeah. Por favor, John. Por favor, John.
Yeah. A lot of pointing and gesticulating.
Yeah. Jude, so when you hear the description that I gave, very brief, but the reason why I wanted to do the interview with you, obviously from what Kerry said, and Kerry met you and she went to see, and we're going to obviously talk about your music later as we get through, but I want to get a sense of who you are. Do you recognize that you're that person? Does that resonate with you, that someone would say you need to speak to this lady because she's amazing, and you're on that list? Is that something that you're kind of comfortable with, and you go, or is it like, what, me? Or is it like, yeah, that's me, that's who I am?
It's a funny thing really, because I guess in some ways I'm a bit embarrassed by it. And I don't really recognize it. No. It's sort of interesting when we do come to the music, and something I wrote in my very extensive liner notes for my album was that over the last few years, and we'll probably come to why this is as well, perhaps, I've recognized that I'm a much more introspective, introverted person than I had perhaps given myself credit for. But that was probably also because it's that thing about maybe living up to perhaps how other people perceive you and what they think about you.
Right.
And but it was sort of an enforced, because of health reasons, it was sort of enforced introspection and solitude and things like that, which I realized is very, very important to me, and very much more, there's a much larger part of me that's about that than perhaps being an extrovert, which I guess a lot of people had maybe thought of me, and perhaps at times I tried to live up to. Does that make sense?
It really does. I mean,
rambling way. I'm a human being. We like compliments, don't we? So if that description is by way of a compliment, then I embrace it wholeheartedly, and that's fantastic and it's lovely. But I also recognize that for me, I'm just somebody who's kind of done their own thing a little bit in the last few years, and I wouldn't say I'm a force of nature particularly at all. I think there are many other people who are real forces of nature, but There we go. I thank you for it. Anything like that, of course, gratefully, humbly appreciated. But I'm not sure that I necessarily recognize myself as that.
Okay. So I want to, you know, I want you know, to try in our short amount of time together to get, you know, obviously we want to get to the story of, you know, where you are now, and you know, we've laid this sort of post of music, and we're going to get to that. I definitely, just let me say this really quickly, I definitely get what you were saying about, I mean, in my own way, you know, interpret it into our own way. And we've actually got an event coming up where we're doing, it's called Someone Else Inside. It's specifically about that tension between sort of like inside and outside, extrovert, introvert, you know, yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, we're all a mixture of all in degrees, isn't it? I suppose I've recognised that the scale has shifted, or maybe it shifted, maybe I just hadn't recognised where it really was. So
that's fascinating. But let's take it back, because I want to kind of track through, if we can, again, short amount of time, but if we can track through. So have you always been Jude Adams? Is that your name that you've always had?
I was christened Judith, but yes.
Right.
Judith.
So take us back to Judith at 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever you want to start. Jude Adams. Were you called Jude as a kid?
I was called Judy, which annoys me intensely. And no offence to anybody who's called Judy, but 1 or 2 family members and 1 or 2 other people who, you know, I give special dispensation to, still sometimes call me Judy, and it just makes my head. You know, it's really funny. I don't know. I think it's because I feel so much a Jude, not a Judy, and whatever that means. So yeah, I mean, I think I've always also been Jude from when I was a small kid. And interestingly, I think in many ways, and I know that I've had other people say this, I've kind of reverted back, if you like, in my later years to how I was as a child, perhaps.
Wow.
In terms of my passions, and maybe it's just about kind of almost coming full circle to an honesty about yourself, you know, and find, and because as a kid, hopefully, you're quite innocent, and so you are just yourself, aren't you? You're true to yourself. And there's an honesty and an authenticity and so on. And I think it's taken me quite a long time, but I think I've kind of, maybe in the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've kind of come back around to that, really.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I've had a few interviews.
I don't say who I am at all, actually, but it's just. So
we'll get to it.
I haven't revealed anything, but. You know, so I mean, as a kid, I was passionate about football. You know, my 2 great loves were pop music, listening to it, and, you know, standing in front of a mirror and all that kind of stuff. And we'll probably come to that a bit more. And football and things. And, you know, and I was sort of quite creative, you know, so I was quite good at creative writing when I was at, what do you call it now? Probably all the names have changed, and I don't have kids myself. So at little school, primary school.
Yeah.
And then I think you kind of get into the turbulence of adolescence, or I certainly did, and there was a lot of stuff going on. And you perhaps sort of lose that, and then university and relationships, and you just kind of finding your way, really. But I think in more recent years, as an older woman, I've sort of almost gone back to the truth of the person that I was as a child, actually.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's really interesting, because that has come up in a number of interviews, and I'm actually going through that myself at the moment. And people and sometimes people haven't even been aware of it, that they are recreating certain patterns, you know, like people moving around a lot as a kid, and then they're moving around a lot now, and you go, do you get that that's happening? And they're like, I never really thought about that. Yeah.
Well, the moving around thing's quite interesting, and I've now started on my next big creative project, which is actually and Kerry actually asked this big question in at the soiree that she came to, and I hadn't sort of shared this information with anybody apart from my partner at the time. She asked me if I was going to write a book, and in actual fact, I'd started talking to somebody about writing a memoir. So I've started on this project now. It's partly the reason why I'm here, just to sort of get myself off the ground with it. But it will be a book which will have kind of poems and snippets and pieces and song lyrics and stories. It might be short or long, but it's also going to have songs that will go with it.
Right.
Anyway, how did I get onto that? Where did that come from?
So we were just talking about that circle from childhood to almost like acculturated thinking, and then getting out of that and coming back to your childhood again, kind of thing. And I was saying that, you know, that's come up in a number of interviews with us as well, with me.
Something else that prompted it, but anyway, having a bit of a senior moment there. So anyway, it was a little plug for the fact I'm writing. It wasn't intended to be. It was relevant to whatever we've been talking about. But
no, that's good. That's
yes,
good.
I know. It was about sort of moving, about people. You were talking.
Oh
about
yeah, moving. Yeah.
Quite a lot as a child, and that perhaps they were moved. You know, that was happening to them again. And actually, one of the stories that I'd started to write, well, one of the sections in the memoir is going to be about home and the meaning of home. And I know that that's been very topical recently, and I've heard a lot of people talking about it on the radio or TV or in different creative productions and things like that. But it'll kind of be split into various sections of my life, really. But interestingly, if we're talking about the relevance of childhood to perhaps later years,
right?
As a child, I felt very, very settled up until 12 or 13 when my parents split up, and the home, the importance of the home actually being broken up, I've reflected on quite a lot, and to sort of review that. And actually, I've had friends who have been in similar situations recently where they've been separating and have asked me, as somebody a long time ago from a broken home, what was important. And I said, if you can, try and keep the kids in their family home.
Wow.
Because I think at certain, it depends on their age, and everybody's circumstances are different, and sometimes maybe that's not possible. But I think the stability of the actual place is really, really important, especially when the family itself is splitting up. But I felt I had that stability and security when I was a child, as opposed to an adolescent, as a teenager.
Yeah.
And that's what I found again also in the last 10 or 20 years. My partner and I have been together for 22 years. So, the stability of home has become really important again.
Right.
And in the intervening times, I was a bit of a butterfly, and in the 25 years I was in London, I moved a huge number of times for different reasons. And, whether it was falling in and out of relationships or whatever. And so that's quite interesting as well. And perhaps that contributes to,
Let me throw this at you, Jude, on that subject. Right here, right now.
Yeah.
What's home to you? Is home an idea? Is home a place? Is home a time in your life?
I think it's a combination of all of those things, really. Of course, it can be to do with people. So if you feel that you're in a stable relationship, whether that's family or personal relationship, that's going to be important. But a place is very important to me.
Yeah.
And places are very important to me. My environment is very important to me.
Right.
For my happiness and sense of security, and also the aesthetics and things, because I've always been into sort of that side of things as well. Being a nest, a homemaker, being a nest builder, all those.
Right. So as we take it through, just so touch on this question and then take us through you know, at whatever speed you want to go, take us through kind of, you know, you have this kind of trauma in your family, and you deal with it, and take us into adulthood, and but with this kind of first question shadowing it all the way. Musical family?
No, not at all.
Interesting.
No.
So where did that come from? Where did that come from in you?
I have absolutely no idea. I really don't. I mean, I don't. I grew up with, we had a broader family all, you know, around us who all lived very close, cousins and things like that.
Right.
And some of those cousins were quite creative and, you know, went through the motions of the violin lessons and all that kind of stuff going through school. And you know, I had various uncles and so on who were quite creative in terms of, who liked music, who were quite creative, perhaps, you know, in terms of art. My dad actually, although he was a GP, drew beautifully and made things just out of his head. I mean, incredibly, and had wanted to be an architect, but
wow,
was rated against it by his mother.
Wow.
So he had a creative thing, but the music, I have no idea. But I, you know, like most kids, I loved listening to pop music when I was a child, and, you know, the record player and all that kind of stuff. But there was no, you know, so it was really just what was contemporary at the time that I would be hearing and listening to, and so on. I had no other sort of influences in terms of classical music, jazz or anything. I'd have known absolutely zip about those. So, but I just always had this kind of quiet passion that was hidden. It was something that was quite a hidden passion. Well, I say hidden, it was probably no more hidden than any other kid, really, when I was a child.
Right.
You know, locking themselves in their bedroom, putting records on, and
singing
in front of a mirror or whatever, you know, that most people have done. I think it's sort of as I got older that it became hidden, perhaps because I was sort of, I really don't know. I have explored this a lot in the last couple of years, and well, longer really, but I think all of my friends at school, at high school, were in choirs and things like that. I didn't do anything. When I went off to college, you know, the old thing where friends would sit around strumming guitar and I'd sit at the side, and I would never sing in front of other people. And so I've never been in a choir, never even done karaoke, never played an instrument, never learned music at all. I didn't learn an instrument when I was going through school. We didn't do that as a family. Neither my other two sisters nor myself. So it was just purely this kind of private passion, really. Occasionally one or two people might overhear me pinging out a tune, you know, to songs and things, and sort of say something nice, but, you know, actually that I probably very rarely gave people that opportunity.
Wow.
And I don't know, I mean, I'll never know really why, but it was clearly a confidence thing. I obviously wasn't given any encouragement, and of course you want encouragement, don't you?
Right.
For, you know, so that you can sort of get validation, I suppose, really.
Yeah.
So on. But I think also I think I also thought, and this has probably carried on, there's still a little part of me that probably thinks this deeply, that I had to be better than I was.
Wow.
In order to share.
Yeah.
So that it was, you know, there's probably a bit of a perfectionist thing, an achiever, a bit of the old achiever thing going on, that actually if I couldn't be as good as I thought other people were, at least, then that wasn't going to be good enough. I would humiliate myself or something like that.
Oh,
you know,
God.
So probably that kind of fear of failure, of rejection, rather than, you know, I guess if I'd been brought up in a different environment, I probably would have just sung for the sheer hell of it and for the sheer pleasure and joining in and all that. You won't get, but you know, you still won't get me just joining in like that. I don't. That will never be there are some things that I'll probably never be able to do.
Oh God, I love that.
And even when I did sort of start singing in public, whenever that was, when I was about I'm 50, nearly 59, so it's for my 50th birthday, and I'd started to take some lessons finally about 6 months before, because Marg, my partner, basically said, don't become an old lady who has regrets, because she knew that he'd bought me lessons several times before, and I hadn't even had the confidence to go and have those lessons. And then finally I did, and so I started performing in front of people when I was 50.
Wow.
But so then when I was doing any kind of performing, and quite often I didn't actually perform again in that first year, other than at my 50th birthday party in front of 100 friends and family who were just a bit gobsmacked, really, because they did have no idea. You know, it can be a bit embarrassing sometimes when things like that happen, and they probably saw me getting up on the stage and thought, oh my God. But anyway, it sort of worked okay. And then I just carried on having lessons and did some jazz workshops in London that year, and then I started sort of performing a little bit around in Kent at the beginning of 2010. But and then that kind of carried on for about 1.5 years, by which time I was seeing a vocal coach in London as well. But then I started to get really ill, so I had to stop. So the actual performing, was sort of quite fleeting in a way, and it would just be little things in Whitstable or roundabout, occasionally sort of bigger events. But that still was taking me massively out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, right.
So it was hard work to get to that event. I would sort of be slightly just really consumed by it for days before, even if I was only going to be singing 3 songs. But I liken it to an exam, where you sometimes have that anticipation and sort of almost dread in the days leading up to an exam, and then when it gets to it, you're sitting on your seat and there ain't nothing you can do. You just got to get on with it. So you go for it, don't you, really? Because you have no other choice.
Right.
Walk out and and so and then I had to stop anyway because I became ill. So but then things took another turn. So
there's that lovely quote from Hamlet where Hamlet's talking to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and he kind of knows that they've been asked to come and spy on him. He's really bright, and in the course of a speech he says this lovely line, which is something like, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that 400 years ago he totally understood where pressure comes from. Do you know what I mean? he kind of got it.
Yeah, totally. And like lots of people, I'm an overthinker. I procrastinate and ruminate, and it's like, and then of course it all just builds up and sort of anyway. But so that was that. It was sort of, so yeah, all a bit bizarre, really. But
let me take you back, Jude, because there's a missing bit that I want to I want you to talk about. So. We kind of, I know we can't fill all of it in, but take me just prior to Marg buying you the lesson. See, that says to me that, like, so something, however ephemeral it was, something that was established in the context of your lives together, that she was buying you these lessons, which you weren't taking up. So how did you get to that point where that context was set, that you were a singer in the making, you just wouldn't take the step? How did you get to that point?
Basically, all the intervening years, from teenage years through college, all the years when I was pursuing my career in the health and fitness industry and things like that, there would be this kind of thing probably still going on from time to time, where I would lock myself in my room or whatever, and that pattern would continue. And obviously, as you get into adulthood, or certainly with some people, there might be little bit of Dutch courage that's involved as well, or it might come after an evening of Dutch courage, where your inhibitions are, but but I wouldn't then be sharing it with other people. I would be, so unfortunately for those people who probably lived with me or whatever throughout all those times, they probably did have to put up with that. But I said that Marg and I have been together for 22, 23 years. So she had many years of that happening.
Right.
You know, hearing me go up into, I don't know, the dining room or the study or something, and you know, after a night out or whatever, and singing, and
Yeah.
clearly that was because I was unleashing something that was very deep inside me,
right.
and that was, you know, meant a lot to me, and that I needed to do and to get out of my system, or, you know, to get out there. And so that's why she, over a period of time, had bought me various lessons that I hadn't gone to. And then it just really reached a head. We were on holiday about 6 or 7 months before my 50th birthday. And as I've said in many times before, she basically took me to task. And it wasn't because she wanted this to sort of stop, but because it was driving her mad. It was sort of happening. But she recognized, you know, it was about her recognizing I had to now do something about this, you know, that I needed to do something about it, because otherwise it might carry on into, you know, real old age. And then I would perhaps look back and think, why the hell didn't I do something about that? You know,
Wow.
You know, why it would have just been a real regret and a real shame. So, you know, and she recognized that I could hold a tune and things. So I don't think she'd have been encouraging it necessarily.
Right.
Well, I don't know, maybe she would, you know, because it doesn't matter whether you can sing or not, you know, if you want to, then it's important to do it, isn't it?
Get it out, yeah.
But it was more the fact that I think she recognised what a deep passion this was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't healthy as much as anything for me not to be trying to fix it, really, or to bring it out and listen a little bit more.
Jude, can you? This may be really easy and it may be tough, but I want to try and get an insight into what that space feels like. You know, because that fascinates me. That there you are living your life, and you've obviously, you know, you're older and you've got a lot of experience. And, you know, when you get into your 40s, you know, you've got a relationship, you're stable, and then there are times when, and you touched on it, and I want to see if we can go just a little bit deeper. Mm-hmm. You touched on it, that you take yourself away and something visceral's happening when you sing. Can you talk about that space? What is that space? What were you know, was it like you were exercising something? Was it like the equivalent of doing a, you know, mud run? What, you know what I mean?
It's about setting yourself free, and that sounds almost cliche, doesn't it?
I love it though.
Because, and when I say, and I'm not embarrassed to say that quite often in adulthood, when I was doing this, it probably was because I had quite a lot to drink, or quite often I was, you know, doing it with a bottle of wine beside me or whatever. But that was about me releasing my inhibitions.
Yeah.
And clearly, because I'd got this thing inside of me that just sort of was sitting somewhere deep down inside, not necessarily, it wasn't causing me a problem, not obviously, not consciously.
Right.
But clearly, when my inhibitions were sort of being released, is that right? Then this would come up. So it was obviously something that was really terribly important. And when it did come up, it was great. It may not have felt so great the next day, but in the moment when I was, you know, I'd got a glass of wine or something, and I was setting all this stuff free, and I was singing my heart out, you know, for 2 or 3 hours or whatever. You know, how amazing is that, to just let all that come
absolutely
spewing out?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is, isn't it? But it is about setting it free. And so in finally taking lessons and doing it properly, you know, it was about sort of no longer suppressing that actually, and yeah, letting it be free, but sort of more openly.
Yeah, yeah. So do you mind talking about, can you take us through, so, you know, take us, do you mind talking about the illness? Do you
No,
mind
not
talking?
no.
Because obviously, you know, part of our thing at the moment is everything's your life. You know, it's not just the good bits that you want on Instagram. It's the shitty bits. That's still your experience. You know, it might be very nice, but it's still your human experience. So, and in that way, I suppose, you know, there you go, and you've made this breakthrough, and you've released your voice, and then something happens. And then through that something happening, which is what I don't know what it is, because I haven't talked to Kerry about it. You're about to tell us, but through that then comes this real breakthrough where you start writing albums and you start releasing music. So can you take us through that part of the story?
Yeah, basically, so I've had ME for the last 6 or 7 years, and I'd probably say now I'm 95% better, and I'm coming out the other end, thankfully. So just that, so to get to the core of that straight away. But the reason I do that is because I think for me it's really important. And look, my take on ME is my take on ME, and I would never want to offend anybody if they think differently. But it's based on my experience and all the sort of research and stuff, therapies and treatments that I've used myself. And it can be a very, very individual thing in terms of symptoms and circumstances and triggers and everything. And so that's really important for me to make clear. For me personally, there were two things that I think really triggered my ME. One is that I had a very nasty virus, the sort of December, January of 2010-11. Right. Which I couldn't, you know, I didn't really shake off properly. We've subsequently found out or suspect that it was a flare-up of the Epstein-Barr virus, which is the glandular fever link. And I had glandular fever very seriously when I was at university.
Wow.
You know, we only suspect that sort of because of blood tests and things showing that there wasn't a flare-up, but we're assuming that that's what that was. And there are strong links between glandular fever, or the Epstein-Barr virus, I should say, and ME. I was also putting myself under a huge amount of pressure. So bear in mind, I had finally set free this voice, but was still putting myself in very uncomfortable situations because I was still getting used to the performing thing. But I'd retrained as an interior designer a few years before, and so I was trying to sort of get, you know, some work off the ground with that, and I was running a sort of 1-bedroom but high spec B&B. So I was taking quite a lot on and putting myself under a lot of pressure. Nobody else was putting me under it. So there were sort of, you know, lots of things crowding in, and essentially for me what happens with ME is, and again, this is my take on it, and I don't want anybody, you know, there's no need for people to jump up and down or respond or anything. But essentially, ME is a neurological illness as well as a physical illness.
Got it, yeah.
So you kind of go into meltdown, really. Your systems, your nervous system, your immune system goes into meltdown. And I think that's because of a pile up of different things attacking my body and my mind and everything, whether that was putting myself under pressure or this virus. So that's kind of what happened. And so throughout 2011, I just started accumulating lots of different symptoms. Whether they were physical symptoms, mental, emotional stuff. I would literally be conking out without any apparent reason. When I say conking out and the fatigue that's involved in ME, it is a fatigue that is totally unlike anything else. I've been exhausted and had burnout things through work and whatever other things. Totally different. Your batteries just go. And there are a lot of other symptoms, whether they're digestive problems, skin problems, feeling like you're coming down with flu all the time, aching joints, aching muscles, sort of fuzzy head, vertigo, loads and loads of things. And then there's a massive impact on you mentally and emotionally as well, which can manifest itself in different ways as well. So I'm just kind of touching on one or two things really.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't get a diagnosis until November 2011. So all of this was going on for nearly a year. And we would go back to the GP, and we were never really, I was being sent off for tests here, there and everywhere, and there was no, anyway, and then I eventually got my diagnosis. And so I tried to keep going with a few things, sort of work-wise and whatever, for several months, foolishly, because naively we thought that maybe I could, but then gradually it became apparent that that was not going to be possible for me to sustain those things, or that it would be good for my recovery. So work stopped, singing stopped, while performing, and so, but then one of the things that I had been encouraged to do, so we didn't personally get any help from our local GP practice. It kind of depends where you live a little bit. Sometimes GPs will send you to a specialist. It's a bit of a postcode lottery, and that's just the way life is. We were fortunate, and I do feel very grateful for this, that we could pay for different treatments and therapies. So I tried lots of different treatments and therapies for all the different, different various symptoms. One of the first things that I did to try and help with the mental and emotional issues, challenges, that were either sort of there as part of the neurological illness, or that are presented to you when you realise you've got a chronic illness. So that has to be managed. That knowledge has to be managed, really, doesn't it? I did CBT for a year, and I then moved on to a different program that was a combination of CBT and NLP and all sorts of things. But within that first year, one of the things I was encouraged to do, or was advised to do, was to start keeping a journal.
Wow.
So that I could just, to help manage myself, I was, writing down my thoughts and feelings and that type of thing. And that is really where the writing started.
Wow, that's so interesting.
So it kind of, so of course it was cathartic in itself, but also, gradually, because I was writing an awful lot, and by the time I started to do that, I obviously had quite a lot of time. I had a lot of solitude and was becoming this more introspective, reflective person. I just found sometimes that some of the stuff I was writing was maybe turning into something resembling poetry or lyrics and things like that. And, then occasionally little tunes would come into my head and I would hum them into my phone. And that is really how it started.
Wow.
Really how it started. So, of course, like anything, a lot of people have said, how do you get started? How do you get started? And I've been going through a really fallow time for quite a long time now. And so it's a total delight, once again, to sort of feel like I'm getting back into a sort of creative writing mode. But a good friend of mine said this about yoga, actually. Sometimes when you have a barrier, or you think, oh, I can't do that, or actually there's some kind of barrier saying, oh, I can't be bothered to do that now, or I put it off until tomorrow, or whatever. But you kind of know in your heart of hearts that actually you really want to be doing it now. It's just, there's something preventing you. So what she says is just sit on the mat. So as with yoga, just get the mat out. Don't ask yourself to do anything more than just put the mat on the floor and sit on it.
Right.
And then see what happens. It's a little bit like that with writing. It's like put a piece of paper in front of you and a pen, and just write some load of rubbish for 2 lines, something like that. And it might be you write a page full of rubbish, but then you might find that you carry on writing and writing. And actually, there will be some of it that won't be rubbish. So you kind of have to write a lot of rubbish to get the good out of it.
I love it.
And that's kind of that's how it started anyway. That's how it started. But I then set about, I was sort of having lessons, and I did a lot of online research to learn about songwriting. I did a 3-month online course with Berklee College of Music in the States. I did a lot to try and learn more about what was involved. And so that's how it started. And then do you want me to carry on with this little story, or did you want to change tack? I'm conscious.
Well, where do you want to go? Do you feel like you want to say more about what happened? I mean,
I'm happy to. I'd carry on talking. I know we have all day, but
I'd be interested. I'd be interested if you could, because I do want to get to some questions, because I just want to throw some things at you, because that's the fun bit. But it would be lovely if you could just kind of take maybe just to, the creation and the release of the first album. That would be really interesting.
How did you get from that to that's what I'm going to say, really. So just sort of trying to summarize that section of this whole adventure. So I did lots of online things and and then there was one particular meeting I had with a guy in Faversham, who's a writer and a producer and various things, and he'd very kindly said he would listen to some of the material I'd been writing, and also listen to some covers and things I'd recorded a few years before.
Right.
And then we sat down for an hour, and at the end of that hour he said, okay, well, you have actually got some good material here, but what you need is you need to find a good arranger.
Wow.
So whatever it is you're wanting to do, at that stage I had no idea what I wanted to do with them. I just thought maybe some of them had some potential, and I wanted somebody who had the expertise and experience to help me turn them into, decent songs. So his advice was go and find a good arranger. So I knew 1 or 2 people in Kent, but to be honest, I wasn't particularly well connected to a music scene in Kent. So and I immediately had in mind somebody who when I mentioned that I'd done some jazz workshops in London in that first year when I'd started having lessons, I did a couple at the 606 Club in London with Leah Delaria, who's quite well known now, and was then, but is much, she really is a force of nature. And Jeanette Mason, who was running the workshops with her, who was the keyboard player, the pianist and stuff. And I'd sort of followed Jeanette over the intervening 5 years and her career and stuff. And I also knew something about her career before. So she was an amazing and is an extraordinary jazz pianist, but she had a far more versatile, kind of eclectic stream of credits in terms of the people she'd worked with, like Oasis, Pulp, Seal, Robert White. Wow. Really, really diverse stuff. And I knew that my songs weren't really going to be jazz. I knew she was going to be extraordinarily good. So she was the one I set my cap at. Right. Which was complete madness, because she was totally out of my league. But anyway, long and short of it, although it was a slightly painful process to eventually get to her, because I was, the initial contact I made with her she didn't get, and of course I was then going through this huge amount of self-doubt, thinking, why have I done this? That ultimate fear of, she doesn't want to work with somebody like me. Right. Anyway, in the end, that was, she just hadn't got the email. Wow. So we then met up, and she said, yeah, I'm on board. And so she became the arranger and the producer. Wow. Initially it was going to be an EP, but then it quite quickly turned into an album. And that's kind of how it moved from journaling to
That's
the
amazing.
album. And
did you write all the songs yourself?
I wrote all the songs myself, came up with all the melodies myself, quite painstakingly, because obviously I don't play an instrument or anything like that. I had a wonderful music teacher in Whitstable who I would see each week, who would just kind of help me. She'd say, well, these are the chords you're using, Jude. And I'd say, what are chords? You know, it's almost as bad as sad as that, really. Anyway, through fair means and foul, over sort of an 18-month period, I wrote all the songs, and Jeanette arranged them. And then we recorded a couple of studios in London, so all the musicians first, and then I did my vocals separately. Sarah Jane Morris duetted on one of the songs. And it was just slightly mind-blowing, really. It was actually, for me, it was very, very exhausting. It was not an easy process at all, because my health still was not great, and also this was such a new experience for me. And you know, I was punching way much.
Seriously,
been doing, but anyway, we pulled it off, and you know, I'm immensely proud.
That's so cool. Listen, Jude, I want you to do something for me. I'm going to ask you some questions. We'll just change tack a little bit. I'm going to throw some questions at you, but before we do that, I want you to think of, and I don't want you to answer it now. I want you to tell me at the end of the interview. I want you to think of a song, and something meaningful that you can tell me a little story about at the end of the interview. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to throw some questions at you. Ready? The one I normally talk about is thriving, but I think you've kind of covered that, so I'm not going to go on that one. I'm going to say to you, Jude Adams, what are we doing here?
We're having a frank chat. What are we doing here, as in life, beings, as human beings? Do you know what? I don't know, really. Well, first of all, we didn't have a choice, did we?
Love it. Love it. Love it.
We happened. Although, you know, I'm very pleased that it did happen. But I think we're all underneath it all pretty much the same, aren't we? Little human beings trying to hopefully go through our lives, making the best of who we are, and what we can, really.
I love it. I love it. Who are you, Jude?
Who am I? Give me a bit more. Give me some prompts.
I can't. That's it.
Who am I? Well, I'm an almost 59-year-old woman sitting in a little studio flat in Cadiz in Spain, embarking upon her second big creative project.
I love it.
And I was going to wear this T-shirt, actually, that I bought here, that I got masses of hits on my Facebook page for. I don't get them for other things, and I took a photograph of the caption on it, which says, "The best is yet to come."
Love it.
And actually, I had, in fact, I bought two of them, because sometimes you see something, and if it works for you, you think, snap that up again, because otherwise they'll be taken off the shelf. And I just find is perfect, isn't it? Because
absolutely.
The best is just, there is no end to that, and that's really important for me, because of what I've done in the last few years as an older woman. But I do feel that there's so much more to come in terms of what I'm setting about doing, and hopefully, also the last few years of writing the album, and whilst I really wasn't very well, was not an easy process. There were masses of challenges in order to get to that finish line, but I think, of course, that will have given me a lot of confidence. It has given me a lot of confidence and a lot of experience, and quite a bit of experience to sort of move on to this next project, and hope produce something that I'm even more proud of, and that
Yeah.
I hope other people can enjoy. And Kerry will be pleased anyway, because she wanted me to write a book. So I'm just her, really.
Listen, I got another one for you. So, I mean, you know, we've spent 45 minutes or whatever, you know, you've told your stories, you know, so articulately, and I could listen to you all afternoon.
Too much.
But listen, if I said to you, Jude, what do I need to know you? What if there were like a pithy statement or 3 things, and I said, like, if I really want to know who Jude Adams is, and you had to be really succinct, what would I need to know?
Oh, that's a big question. About me, or about my philosophies on life, or just anything, really?
Well, that's a good one. Let's go there instead. Have you got a philosophy of life? Do you think you have a personal philosophy?
It's a bit corny and a bit cliche, but be true to yourself, I think, is really, really important. And I think that harks back to what at the beginning of our conversation, which was how I think, certainly with me, and that you said you've heard it from a lot of other people, how you are as a child, and then perhaps, you know, that you revert back to that in later years. It's about honesty and truthfulness, and sometimes being true to yourself and that level of honesty isn't easy. You know, that might not be anything. It doesn't mean just because you're being true to yourself that it's all going to be roses. In fact, quite often not. That's not right. Because in being true to yourself, it might mean you've got to confront some very difficult things, you know, perhaps about yourself, or maybe about other people who you prefer to think kindly of, or whatever it is. So I think being true to yourself, because I think that gives you perhaps fundamentally the best level of contentment you can hope for. The best is yet to come is what I've, you know, I've
I love it.
So I'm kind of slightly in love with that at the moment. And I don't know really.
Okay. That's good. I've got a couple here. I want you to complete the sentences. Yeah.
Ooh.
Success is.
Golly. Success is. I don't want to say what I've said before. I was going to say success is being true to yourself. Success is the fulfillment of a lifetime's ambition.
Oh my goodness, I love it. I love it.
I'm not sure. I have to think about that again, though.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, listen. Pressure comes from
the pressure you put on yourself.
Wow. Love. Jude, in the end, it all comes down to.
In the end, it all comes down to. Again, it's the same sort of thing. It all comes down to the way you manage yourself, the things you choose for yourself in life, and sort of about, again, it's a bit, you know, it's that thing about self-care and self-love, and love. Learning to love yourself, as you know, many of us will do. It isn't about arrogance and
right.
You know, it's about something much deeper than that. Because if you can't care for yourself and be kind to yourself and love yourself, it does sound a bit corny, but then if you haven't got that right, then you won't be able to, you know, do those things for other people.
I got it. Fill this one in. Given the chance, I would.
Woo! Oh, given the chance, I would. Record a duet with Dusty Springfield.
Let's make it happen. I love it.
You could do now, couldn't you?
Oh my God, I love
so
that.
cool. How
That's
funny.
so cool. That's
Well,
so cool.
it's all been done with Elvis, hasn't it?
Okay, listen. I'm just going to throw this in because this, from basically from what you've said, I've just thought of this. So, quick answer: writing or singing?
Oh, right here, right now, writing.
Yeah.
Because that's
sorry, that was so mean. I'm sorry.
That was terribly mean. That was horrible.
It was a horrible thing to do, but I couldn't resist. Oh my God, Jude, you've been so amazing. I've loved talking to you. Can you finish off? Oh, I've got one other thing. Listen, I must do this because I love this. This is the best one of all. So not many people know this, but I've developed a small time machine, and I can let you borrow it, but I want you to do something specific with it. I want you to go back to your childhood, and I'm just going to give you a minute, and you're going to go and see young Judith, and you're going to go and see young Judy, and you're going to talk to her. And do you mind sharing what you're going to say? What you're going to share with her? What are you going to say to her, Jude?
I'm going to say, believe in yourself, follow your dreams. Don't be too fearful or frightened to share those dreams with other people.
Love it. Absolutely love it. It's just, it gets me every time when I hear people talk to themselves as a child. It's like, okay, listen, tell me.
Something I didn't do, and you know, but I'm doing something about it now. But anyway.
Absolutely. I love that. So as we finish off, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It's been brilliant. So tell me a little story about a song that's meaningful, Jude.
Well, there could be, as with everybody, there could be hundreds and thousands and all sorts of meaningful songs, seriously meaningful songs. But actually, this one that I thought of, I just find it sort of it's uplifting and it's fun. So I can't even think of the proper name. It's a Billy Ocean song.
Right.
And it talks about painted on jeans. Do you remember the one?
Oh, yeah, Caribbean Queen.
I think that's the one. Yeah, Caribbean Queen.
Dash by me in painted on jeans.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And the reason that just sprung to mind, and God knows why I thought it because of all the meaningful, profound, beautiful songs, you know, that have meant so much to me in my life. But it just made me smile, because when I was in my sort of early 20s and living so I'd started my career in the health and fitness industry.
Right.
But it was the early 80s, and I'd become a gay woman, and I was living in London, so you kind of lived a slightly underground life, really, socially, right. Quite often, because I certainly chose not to be out professionally and things like that.
Got it, yeah.
And I used to there were a couple of years, when I was 25, 26, where I went to the famous Gateways Club in the King's Road, right. Which closed down around that time, actually, but it was notorious, very famous. It was featured in The Killing of Sister George. And okay. I used to go down there, and I had some really good mates, and we used to have an absolute ball. And that song just reminds me of all the fun we had, dancing, the freedom that we were experiencing as well in that environment, just amongst ourselves. It was very empowering. It was very uplifting. It just reminds me of those fun times, really. That's and I still have one or two of those mates who are very, very good mates to this day. And every time we mention those days, that song comes up, you know, and they were fun times.
That's perfect.
Interesting times, and not always, you know, the happiest of times, and a strange time, but those times on that dance floor in that club, how much fun was that?
Thank you so much. That's a brilliant.
I just changed it.
That's a brilliant way to finish off. That's so cool. I love it. Jude, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been really lovely to speak to you.
You're very welcome, and I really appreciate you asking me.
Oh, it's been fantastic, and thank you so much again. And good luck with everything. And we'll follow you through, through Kerry. And do you mind if I can I tag some of your whatever you've got onto the interviews when I share them?
Totally, yeah. I've got a music Facebook page, Jude Adams Sings.
Right.
Same handle on Twitter, Instagram.
I'll put it all on there.
All Jude Adams Sings, basically. And
fantastic.
YouTube.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of stuff on YouTube. So, and in fact, there should be a post that's just gone out across everything whilst we've been talking. That's a little 10-minute show reel. Which
brilliant.
I would say it's worth watching.
There
is a 2-minute version actually, but the 10-minute one is worth it. And so your wife, her voice features in it. You have to watch it all the way through.
I'll tag that in the comments down below. So when we share it, I'll tag it in the comments. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Jude. Thanks for your time.
Bye.
See you later. Bye. Bye. See you later.